Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I am sorry that I can't be with y'all today. I feel like I'm winning an award and I'm making my acceptance speech. Okay, it's not that. I won't take up too much of your time, but I was asked to reflect on how organizations have benefited from our timeline activity. I think a few things that came up for me, and you could see from the pictures that we've done this timeline activity with a lot of different audiences and a lot of different spaces. And I think each time its value has been different, but always equally impactful. I think back to the first time that we really started using this timeline, it was with APS, and it was with their parent leaders university that we were starting up and initiating. And part of the reason that we use the timeline is so that parents could see themselves in the education timeline of APS, or even just really connect their personal story to APS's story. And so instead of seeing themselves as parents who were on the outside of this educational timeline, they actually got to think back to their educational timeline and what has impacted them and what educators, what experiences made a difference. And so being able to layer their personal education experience against the educational experience of APS just connected them to the work a little bit differently. I think one of the great benefits of doing the timeline is that people get to see themselves in what can feel like an organization, a movement, or a system that is bigger than themselves. And that's really critical. So we recently did the Sandy Hook project and we used the timeline in that regard. What we were able to do is first do the timeline and pull out all of the dates and milestones that their marketing team had been able to lift up. And so from that, it's just like a big organizational perspective, but there isn't the individual in it. And so what we were able to do is just layer into that timeline who they are. When did they begin this work? When did they join the organization? And what was the organization like when they joined it? And again, they were able to see themselves in the work in the midst of this like big organizational process. The other thing that they were able to do is really evaluate like who is telling our story and how is it being told, and does that feel right for us? And so a lot of the milestones were about external motivators or things that were happening kind of organization wide, and it didn't feel reflective of their individual and their collective work as program folks. And so being able to even rewrite or add to the timeline from their perspective really helped them to, one, understand what is their story and what is it that they value as most important when they think of the story of their organization. The third example I would offer is I did this timeline with a small organization that literally was two folks, and then they brought on a third. And because the executive director who was over the organization had been doing most of that work herself, we were able to structure the timeline in a way where we just positioned her to tell her story. So when she started at the organization, here's what was going on. And we used note cards and just jotted things down as she told them. And so the benefit there was that I think oftentimes, especially in these nonprofit spaces, especially when there's turnover, there's this institutional knowledge that never gets captured in any really formal way. And so using the timeline as an activity to help her tell the story of the organization was great for us to capture these really big, significant dates. And so even though it had been maybe 3 years, 3 to 5 years of a timeline, she was able to step back and, one, really see how much work her organization had been doing, really how much work she had been doing, and it really allowed them to help inform, and how do we want to move forward? What are the next steps? And so it was just as much about looking back, but also being able to look forward and say, okay, if this is what we've done in 3 to 5 years, where do we go next? And so I think the benefit there, again, was, one, being able to capture this institutional knowledge that so many leaders just hold on to and don't think is relevant. But for a new staff joining, they're like, oh, so that's how this decision came to be, or that's why our organizational structure looks like this now, because it was birthed out of something that happened 2 years, 5 years, 7 years ago. And so being able to capture that institutional knowledge in a formal way has been really beneficial. I'm almost certain I have said all the things that Gina and Amara and Falami have added, but I hope a little bit of that color commentary in terms of the benefit that I've seen the timeline add to organizations is beneficial to you all. So have a wonderful day, rest of the day. Again, sorry that I can't be there with you all, but just know I'm there in spirit. And now I'm here in this video. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.